You're not a child anymore when you're breaking into a store to rob it.
Welcome back to Under Oath. Tony Thacker, the manager of VIP Smoke Shop in Ohio, was involved in a fatal shooting, 2023. Burglars broke in, smashing windows, grabbing stuff. Thacker ran to the back, grabbed a gun, and fired at the fleeing suspects. Very important, the word fleeing. People will discuss that later. 16-year-old boy was killed. Prosecutors argued that the suspects were running away and no longer posed a threat when Thacker opened fire.
Thacker was sentenced 8 to 9 years in prison after being found guilty of felonious assault. The prosecution emphasized that using deadly force when the threat had already passed was unjustified. Thacker was a felon and not allowed to have a firearm, and this factored into his sentencing.
Everyone is extremely concerned about this 16-year-old being shot. Okay? You and I both know what happens when people commit felonies and somebody gets killed. What happens?
Well, everybody involved in the robbery should be charged with felony murder.
Exactly.
You were committing a felony. Somebody died during the course of you committing that felony. So all of your buddies who were breaking in with you, every single one of them should have to answer for your death. Did that happen in this case? Do we know?
Don't know. They don't even want to talk about it.
What a travesty of justice if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
It would definitely happen here in Florida.
It happens in a lot of places. Felony murder is serious. Even if you're, for example, let's say you're the lookout. You're just the lookout. And one of your buddies gets killed. You get charged with it too, because you're accomplice to the felony. So obviously this prosecutor was, how can I say it? Let's just say
biased,
looking for some attention, that he didn't charge them the same way if he didn't.
Oh, no, he can't charge children. That's what he's going to say. He can't charge children.
Oh, they don't know what they're...
You're not a child anymore when you're breaking into a store to rob it. You're not a child anymore.
Committing a felony. You're not
If you're stealing a Snickers at 7-Eleven because you're putting it in your pocket, you don't want to pay for it, okay, that's something a child does.
Prosecutors argued that Thacker unlawfully fired at the robbers as they fled, making it a case for excessive force. They emphasized that once the burglars were retreating, the justification for legal self-defense no longer applied.
Maybe you can make an argument that self-defense is no longer applicable, but it's not just me that I'm protecting. I'm protecting myself primarily, but now I've got, 4 or 5 fleeing felons who are going to be unleashed out onto the community? I'm fearful now that they're going to do the same thing to other people out there in the community. I have a duty to eliminate that threat. Of course you shoot at these guys while they're leaving.
So you're claiming self-defense of others?
Defense of yourself or defense of others? I have now encountered a gang of people who are going around and committing serious felonies, and they're trying to escape my place just because my place is going to be harder than they thought. And they're going to go down the street and rob the store next door. Of course I'm allowed to think that. That's what they're going to do.
Well, that's the argument they're going to make. If I was a prosecutor, I think I have a simple argument. I think he can claim that the threat to myself was over. So forget defense to myself. They're running away. I'm no longer defending myself. I guess your claim that they were defending other people because these people might hurt somebody while they're fleeing.
That's a reasonable assumption to make when you're encountering people like this.
But how are you going to argue the concept that you can only use deadly force against deadly force?
That's not true. You can use deadly force to prevent great bodily harm, even if the great bodily harm will not necessarily result in death of another person.
Well, when I say deadly force, I'm talking about the temperament of it, not exactly that you can die from it. Yes, if I get punched hard enough in the face, I can die. I get that. But the concept of using a gun to defend your property and defending stuff is different than defending a life. It's
different, but it's still lawful.
So you're saying that they're fleeing. I'm no longer, how can I say it, in danger, but other people might be in danger. And that's
Absolutely.
The argument you're making.
That's the justification.
If you get a good jury.
I think a jury buys that.
You're need a really good jury to buy that.
Maybe a jury of these boys' moms, they might have a different view. But I think of people who are sick and tired of getting robbed, the people who live in that community, who are the victims of this all the time, I think that's a very favorable jury.
Well, based on what you're saying, then self-defense can never cross the line, really. If people are running away, then they deserve to get shot.
If you put yourself in a position where somebody else feels like they need to arm themselves to deal with the situation that you created, you can't cry later that you get shot. And your family can't cry later that you got killed.
Well, we're not talking about the families. We're talking about the law. This has nothing to do with families.
This is completely justified under the law.
Well,
and if it's not, it should be.
That's a tough call.
If they hadn't decided to commit burglary, they wouldn't have been in a position to be shot.
Now, if they have no weapons,
doesn't matter.
They just steal.
4 or 5 people can beat you to death.
Okay, first off, when we talk about burglary doesn't require much of a force. You just have to enter somebody's property and steal something. That's burglary.
You have to use force to gain entry.
Force,
breaking the glass.
You can open the door can be considered force. Burglary does not require.
That's not the facts of this case. The facts of this case, the glass is broken for them to gain entry. That's forcible entry.
So
it is a burglary.
I break a window.
That's classic burglary.
I reach in, I steal a watch, I run away, and you can shoot me for it.
Classic burglary. Can shoot you while you're doing it.
Well, as I'm running away.
While you're still in my sight. And I just saw you do it.
So 100 yards away, I can pick you off if I
would make the argument that you can. I know the law wouldn't necessarily like that. If I have a client, I'd like for you to take the shots while you're in the store. Don't run out of the store and shoot down the street. That might be a little bit more dangerous.
Have you ever heard the line going, when that does happen, you got to grab them and pull them back into your property?
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. You're trying to hide evidence.
That's the worst. That's some old weird advice.
I hear that from everybody.
It would be better
just
if I
drag them in.
Drag them back onto my property.
No, it wouldn't be better. Let me tell you, folks, it would not be better for you to have proven that you're trying to manipulate the crime scene, if it is a crime scene, after the fact. You don't want a prosecutor to have that kind of ammo.
Now, as a prosecutor, I get tired because prosecutors get choices to make and they get to choose what to do or not to do. And what I hate is when it crosses the line that I'm prosecuting for a political purpose. I'm not just enforcing law or order, but I'm doing it for a political purpose. In this situation, you have a split-second issue involved. I don't get a chance to go later on. It's not like, who was that pilot who landed in New York in the river? Was that Sully?
Captain Sully.
Captain Sully. They tried to do these reenactments where they were telling the pilots what would happen. And some of them were able to actually fly back. But it took them 17 to 19 chances. And they knew what was going to happen. And the argument was, you're taking the human element out of it. And I think prosecutors and even sometimes defense attorneys, we take the human element out of it in the sense that we're not actually acting like we're humans. Oh, this guy grabbed his gun. I promise you this. He didn't go, okay, give me about a second to think about this. Let me sit down.
You don't have the time.
I'm going to call for some advice. I'm going to see what the legal rules are. He's going, something's going down, and I'm reacting to it.
Well, let me ask a very reasonable question. These folks have already demonstrated that they have no regard for the law and no regard for the safety of the people who are in the building. Who's to say they weren't running out to their car to get the guns that they didn't think that they needed to then return? Who's to say that that wasn't going to happen?
That's a good argument. That's a valid argument. I think depending on the city you're in, your argument either flies or doesn't fly.
I think it depends on what you want to promote.
As a city or as a person?
Yes. Do you want to promote the idea that it's okay to break in and everybody should have to use kids' gloves in treating you? Is that the kind of society you want to have? Or do you want to have the kind of society where you think, my God, I better not break into somebody else's place. The law will bend over backwards to make sure that I'm the one that's punished and they're not.
So we're talking about the California-Texas argument. You're talking philosophical differences.
What type of behavior do I want from my citizens?
I remember I was in Oklahoma. I was going to University of Tulsa School of Law, and somebody pulled a practical joke on me. I didn't know it was a joke. I entered my apartment.
No, I remember this.
There is somebody in my bathroom. I lose my mind. I can see feet walking back and forth in my bathroom. I'm yelling.
The shadow?
Yeah. I grab my shotgun because I had a shotgun at the time. I gave it away later.
12 gauge? 20?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
12 gauge?
It was great. It was a great gun.
Big gun.
Big gun. You're not walking away. There's no. So I have the gun at the door, and I call the police. The police show up about 30 seconds later. I mean, they're fast. I mean, they were just fast.
30
I don't know, they're in the
seconds?
neighborhood. It felt like maybe every second felt like an eternity, but they were quick. And I realized as I'm standing in the door holding this shotgun as these police officers walked up, if I was in Miami, I would have been shot dead. The police officer walks up to me and says, "Hey, boy, how's everything going?" I said, "Somebody's in the apartment." He goes, "You got a gun on him?" I said, "Yeah, I do, sir." He goes, "Hold on." Calls back, tells his buddy to come in. He goes, "All right." He didn't tell me to put the gun down. He told me to point the gun up, point it towards the ceiling. Like I was now deputized as backup.
Can you point that gun towards it?
Yes. And these police officers bum rushed the bathroom. And let's just say somebody stuck a goat in my apartment and thought it was funny. But that's a typical difference between where you are. In Oklahoma, of course, they think it's normal for me to sit there with my gun out. In Miami, I might have been shot dead. So I think when it comes down to this stuff, where you are and the politics of your city and state are going to affect this argument.